Good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to everyone who's joining us this morning. I'm Sarah Gavel. I'm the Partnerships and Development Manager here at the Australian Academy of Technological Sciences and Engineering, also known as ATSE. I would like to begin our webinar today by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands where I'm joining from today, beautiful Ngunnawal country. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present, and I would like to extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people joining us today, as well as to acknowledge the traditional owners of whatever country you are joining us from today. And as we come together to share and discuss our knowledge and experience, we also recognise the traditional knowledge and the deep history of Australia's first people, as the world's oldest surviving culture and Australia's first scientists and technologists. So before we get on to the webinar today, I'll just start with a bit of housekeeping. We would like to remind all attendees that they have agreed to abide by ATSE's code of conduct, and including as you enter questions in the Q&A channel. This webinar will be recorded and the recording will be made available on ATSE's YouTube channel shortly after today's session. There are captions enabled today, so if you require them, they should pop up at the bottom of your screen. And be sure to submit your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen at any point throughout the webinar. This wonderful webinar series is brought to you by ATSE's National STEM Education Initiative, STELLA, which is designed to engage young people in rich STEM learning at school by using hands-on curriculum-aligned resources to explore the principles of sustainability and renewable energy. You can find out more by visiting stella.org.au. I will soon hand over to today's moderator and our brilliant panelists. I just thought I might quickly share a little bit about me. I have spent the last almost 20 years working in and around the charities and not-for-profit sector. It's probably not where I'd initially seen my career heading all those years ago when I was studying French and Italian combined with a commerce degree. But I think what's driven my career journey is the opportunity to make an impact. And I've been lucky enough to do that in a range of large and small charities and in educational institutions like universities and schools, both in-house and as a consultant, and particularly through harnessing the power of partnerships. So at ATSE, my role is to work with values-aligned organisations to develop partnerships for impact across our programs. Partnerships just like the one that we recently announced with Alinta, who we're working with to get Stella kits into more schools. And I'm really delighted that Lyndon Blair from Alinta is joining us today for this webinar. We'll get to know you and your journey a bit later, but we'd really like to acknowledge Alinta Energy's support and thank Alinta for your leadership in helping to grow our next generation of STEM leaders. Likewise, ATSE has a wonderful relationship with Aurecon, and we're really delighted to welcome Colin Sheldon from Aurecon to the webinar this morning too. So the theme for today's session is Future-Proofing the Planet, Careers Powering the Energy Transition. It's an exciting chance for us to explore Australia's transition to clean, secure and reliable energy systems and the sorts of careers that are making this transition possible now and into the future. So with that, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you our first speaker and ATSE Fellow, Rochelle Doyle. Rochelle is a passionate leader and advocate for the energy transition with extensive experience in the energy and minerals processing sectors. She has successfully led nationally significant projects involving innovative applications of technology, science, and engineering ingenuity to solve challenges associated with complex projects and operating environments. She is chair of the Standards Australia ME 093 Hydrogen Technologies Committee and played a pivotal role in shaping the standards and guidelines underpinning the safe and effective rollout of hydrogen strategies across Australia. A highly regarded strategic thinker, she has a track record of building long-term, meaningful industry-academia partnerships for sustainable development. She holds numerous advisory roles that draw on her insights and expertise for a low-carbon future, and she's a brilliant role model for women in technology and engineering. Rochelle, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great, thanks, Sarah, and thanks for that lovely introduction. So welcome to everyone who's joining us today from all the different places. Really excited to be here with Colin and Lyndon and share some of our career journeys. I just wanted to start by acknowledging the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, who are the traditional owners in Perth, where I'm joining you from today, and call out and respect the elders, current and past, and also recognise their efforts over time to help look after our land and their deep connection to it. And I echo Sarah's comments about them being the first scientists and engineers who've been here before us. So it's really great opportunity to be with you today and talk about our careers in terms of powering the energy transition and helping us move towards a sustainable future. There's so many wonderful opportunities out there, and what we're going to give you today is a really small snapshot based on the three of us. As Australia and the world accelerates towards the net zero future, there's a lot of different roles popping up, and the future will hold jobs that don't even exist today. And STEM is a fantastic career pathway that really sets you on that journey. And I hope when you walk away from today, you can have that same sense of excitement that we all share about being part of that future. So as I said, we've got Colin Sheldon and Lyndon Blair joining us. But before we hear from them, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my own journey to get to where I am today. So it all started, well, it really started back in high school. So I loved chemistry and physics. I also loved English literature. So I have a passion for both the arts and the sciences and technology. But I'm really keen on applied solutions. So when the time came to choose what did I want to be when I grew up, I chose to go and study chemical engineering. And the reason for that is with that particular pathway, you can work in all sorts of sectors that help create what we need for our lives. So it's the food industries, it's the mineral processing industries, pharmaceuticals. There's chemical engineers working across so many different places. For me, when I graduated, I started at Alcoa Refinery at Wagerup, which is down in the southwest of Western Australia. And that's the first little picture you can see there of a massive refinery. At the time, it was the biggest operating alumina refinery in the world. And so that was a really great experience for me to get out into the real world, practice my chemical engineering skills and really apply that technical knowledge, build a deep appreciation for safety and the environment and how we can influence those in business, and also get the chance to actually build my leadership skills through operations and leading teams on site. From there, I transitioned across to work in the energy sector with oil and gas. And those roles took me to many places. So you can see in the middle picture, I'm standing in front of what looks like a small demountable hut. That's in South Africa, where I was with Chevron. And we have the opportunity there to go out and work with the local community in terms of building schools so that the children there had safe environment to go and do their studies so they could chart their path towards the future as well. In more recent times, I've been working very heavily in the technology space. And so I've had the good fortune to work with a lot of our amazing universities to develop new technologies, such as the photocatalytic reactor you can see in the picture there. And that is actually taking waste, so things like plastic bottles, and converting it into new fuel sources. And I think what I've been really fortunate about through my roles is I've been able to travel and work with different cultures and in different places around the world. So from the West Australia, both north and south, through Europe, in the offshore industries in the UK and Norway, South Africa, through Asia. And that's given me a deep appreciation for the different cultures and the value of diversity and what we can all bring together when we work together. So it's been quite an amazing trip. I guess I'd say my first ever role model that pushed me in the right direction was my grandfather, who was a self-trained engineer who helped build the first major dam in Western Australia. And so whilst the rest of my family were teachers, that's what appealed to me and led me down it. And I'm still really excited every day to be applying the innovation, technology and engineering skills I have to help deliver the future we need. So it's been a really privileged career. I've had some great opportunities, and really a lot of what it is has been about working with amazing people as we work together to solve these problems. So that's a little bit about me. So I'm delighted now to introduce you to Colin Sheldon. Colin is a chartered and registered mechanical engineer with experience across the rail, resources, utilities, heavy industry, manufacturing, and defence sectors. So again, someone with a very varied and diverse career. Colin is currently a consulting manager at Oricon with a focus on the management of critical infrastructure and assets across Australia. Prior to this, Colin held roles at the Big Four consulting firms, a smaller asset management consultancy, and a major mining company. His decade of asset management experience has resulted in his participation in standards developments with Standards Australia, the International Standards Organisation, and IEC, and conformity assessment with NATA. Colin currently serves as the chair of the Mechanical College Board and as a National Congress delegate of Engineers Australia. And he's also part of the ATSE IMNIS program, which is a mentoring program we have within ATSE that connects industry professionals with early career researchers so that we can share some of our stories and journey with them to help them on their way. So I'm delighted now to hand over to Colin.
Great, thanks so much, Rochelle. Yeah, great to be here. I really value the opportunity to talk about my career journey amongst Lyndon and Rochelle as well. So yeah, my name's Colin. I'm a manager at Oricon. A bit about myself, and going back a little while, I am an immigrant from South Africa. I'm a son of an engineer and teacher. And I grew up in Brisbane. So we immigrated to Brisbane, and I did my last few years of primary school and then high school here in Brisbane, and then went on to study a Bachelor of Engineering in Mechanical at UQ. And I guess in those early years, I really enjoyed those STEM subjects. I loved maths, I loved physics, I loved science. I tended to struggle a bit more with the creative subjects, so English and arts. And just something maybe to think about is, in my experience, those subjects have been really important, and the engineers who've really thrived are those that are actually really creative and can apply creative solutions. So while I was studying at UQ, I got a scholarship with a mining company called Anglo American. And so I started working for them. I moved to the Hunter Valley for a little while and started working in one of their thermal coal mines there that supplied coal to a nearby power plant, and then went to work in their steelmaking coal mines up in the Bowen Basin. So I started to get a bit of an appreciation of the energy sector, the mining sector, and how they integrated in that basic form. So I was really privileged. I worked at open cut and underground mining operations. I worked mainly in operations and maintenance. I got to work on existing assets and operations, and then also help build a new mine, which was really a great chance to contribute in that way. And it was around that time I'd probably been out of university 4 or 5 years. I started to get involved with Standards Australia. I joined a mining equipment committee. I also started to get involved with Engineers Australia. I really liked the ecosystem that engineers have access to in terms of standards, their professional organisations, as well as the conformity assessment style services like NATA. And that was really interesting. Got to around 2017, and I just got married, and we wanted to start a family, so we moved back to Brisbane, and then I've been back in Brisbane really ever since. And I joined a small consultancy. It was 16 people at the time, and I was doing a lot of what they called asset integrity work, looking at the big material risks for different clients and how they were going to control those. And at the same time, what we were looking at was how to optimize operations and gain efficiencies for our clients. And what that meant is mainly more so in a cost sense, but as things progressed, it became more and more evident that this was also an opportunity for energy efficiency, and how that was becoming such an important factor for companies. I got to work on critical HV networks, critical mining equipment, and that then started, that asset integrity lens started to morph into asset resilience. So we started to look at what the material risks were, what the big factor risks were, and how to control them now and into the future. So our little consultancy, or the little consultancy I was a part of, that then got absorbed by one of the big 4 consultancies, Deloitte, and I joined their climate and engineering team. And what that meant is we started to get access to a much bigger client base. So yeah, the 16 people consultancy that I was part of, we now had much bigger opportunities, and we got to work with a lot of the power utilities and start to look at what assets they had, which ones were critical, and how to help manage that. It was around this time as well my standards involvement started to change a bit. I started to notice the standards were about how to power the mining equipment, so a lot more about batteries for mining equipment, and also then asset management, which has become a feature of my career. It's how we manage a coordinated set of activities to reduce cost and risk, and I really like that, and that's also meant I've become involved with a committee about the management of network assets in power systems. So yeah, I've got a great deal out of being involved with Standards Australia, and enjoying looking at how to think about where the industry is going, and how to standardize and introduce new technologies in that standardized way. I also have been looking at decarbonisation, which is very closely linked to electrification and that energy transition, specifically for the mining sector and the equipment involved there. So whether that be battery-powered mining equipment, similarly with hydrogen, and then also alternative technologies to the standard truck and shovel approach that a lot of miners take. Then I've also more recently looked for opportunities to contribute in a volunteer capacity, and there's an organisation called Beyond Zero Emissions, a think tank there, and you can volunteer a bit of time to do some clean tech research for them. So I've really enjoyed that opportunity to give back in a way in my own spare time, and try to understand and learn a bit more about what clean tech exists out there and what's emerging and upcoming. And I wanted to self-educate a little bit. There's a program called the Carbon Literacy Project, and that's a global project, and you can get involved with that and learn about a lot of the terminology, the situation in different countries, and I found that really a great way to get a better understanding at a global level and become more of a global citizen in that capacity. I've just, I guess in summary, really enjoyed the chance to learn and to grow as a person, as a professional in an engineering context. It's been something that I truly am appreciative of, and I've really enjoyed the opportunity. Thanks, Rochelle. Great.
Thanks, Colin. Really thank you for sharing insights into your journey, and acknowledge the lifelong learning commitment and the passion for that continuous growth that engineers hold so dear to our hearts, because the industries we work in are constantly evolving, and part of what we do to make sure we stay current is to do that lifelong learning. And the volunteering aspect too is really important. And I think there's so many great opportunities out there. So thanks for that. It's now my great pleasure to introduce Lyndon Blair. He's the head of power development, West Coast and offshore at Alinta Energy, who are based in Western Australia. Lyndon has over 10 years experience in the energy industry, where he initially worked in the offshore gas sector in Northwest WA in operations, project development and construction. He's passionate about sustainability and moved into the electricity sector in 2021 to support Alinta Energy develop its pipeline of wind energy projects, which includes the Spinifex offshore wind farm in Victoria and the Murray wind farm in the Shire of Dandaragan. It's always a tricky one for me to say, even though I live here. Lyndon holds a Bachelor of Mechanical Engineering and Bachelor of Science. He's a graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors and was awarded the 2024 Emerging Professional Engineer of the Year in Western Australia by Engineers Australia. And so now I'll hand over to Lyndon so we can hear about his journey. Thanks, Lyndon.
Thanks very much, Rochelle, and thanks, Colin, as well. I think as I talk about my career journey, I'm going to be sharing quite a few parallels and similarities with what Colin and Rochelle have explained as well. But before I start, I'd like to also share in Rochelle's acknowledgement of the Whadjuk Noongar people, where I'm joining from today. And the reason I think that's important is that through the renewable energy transition, we have a real opportunity to do things a bit differently to how they've been done over the last 100 to 150 years, and really uplift First Nations people around the country and support closing the gap. I've been lucky enough in my recent role to get to know a lot of different Aboriginal peoples around Australia, particularly in Western Victoria with the Gunditjmara and Eastern Maar people, and also more recently in Western Australia with the Whadjuk, Yuid and Ngalakala Boodja people. And it's been a real pleasure to learn about the great depth of different cultures and knowledge that all of those peoples have. So talking through my career journey, I probably never really had a chance but to get into STEM. My dad was a physicist and my mum was a medical scientist. So the dinner table discussion was always pretty technical in nature. And that meant I was lucky enough as a kid to spend a lot of time hands-on and making stuff in the garage. And then once I started school, I jumped into a lot of opportunities that were really STEM learning opportunities that I was lucky enough to be exposed to. So I'll talk through each of these pictures. Back in 2005, there was a great STEM challenge called at the time it was the Western Power Solar Car Challenge. I think it's now sponsored by Synergy. And that was an opportunity for, at the time, I think year 9 and 10 students to build little toy-sized solar-powered cars and race them around a track, and who could go the fastest would win, with a bunch of different rules. And that program was, I guess you could say, extracurricular, and it was done by a design and technology teacher in his own time. And he emerged as a real sort of mentor that I think shaped my career path down the track. So hats off to all those STEM teachers around the country. After the Solar Car Challenge, another one was the Electric Vehicle Challenge, which is that 2006 photo. And this was an opportunity to scale up in size and build something a little bit bigger. Again, electrically operated, so you could say using clean energy, depending on where the electricity came from. And we actually got to drive these cars and race them around a track, and it was who could do the most laps within an hour that won. So both of these were a good opportunity to apply some of the maths and sciences that I've been learning at school, but also to actually get some hands-on skills, how to make stuff. And I think getting hands-on skills is a really important part of any STEM profession. You have to be able to not just think about it on paper, but actually put things into practice. So those experiences, I think, shaped my selection of university courses, where I chose to do mechanical engineering and physics and applied maths. But again, an extracurricular learning opportunity came up, and that was the UWA motorsport team, which is again one size up from the Electric Vehicle Challenge. This is part of the Society of Automotive Engineers Formula Student program, where teams of university students get to build I won't say full size, but it's a small race car, and that's a photo of the 2012 car there, which we were driving still in 2013 at UWA. So hats off to the Society of Automotive Engineers and to University of Western Australia for providing a great opportunity like that. And again, it's an opportunity for students to put their skills into practice. So after graduating, I'd done a few internships at different industries, one in the mining sector and another one in the offshore engineering sector, doing some very sort of computationally intensive finite element modeling. And one of those internships led me to take up a graduate position with Woodside, which is, I think, Australia's largest oil and gas company. And that role was a great way to see things done safely and to see things done well. Woodside has a lot of established processes and a great number of subject matter experts who you could learn from and sort of become mentors within the company. That role gave me a lot of opportunities to go around some exciting places. So the first one there, that's up on the northwest shelf of Western Australia, installing some subsea equipment next to a drilling rig in the background. And then a couple of years later, I was seconded into a manufacturing company in Malaysia for quite a while. And there's a pretty cool photo there of one of those big Antonov aircraft being used to transport what's called a Christmas tree. And no, it's not the Christmas tree that sits next to your fireplace at Christmas time. It's, in this case, about a 90-ton piece of steel and control systems that is used to sit on top of a wellhead and control gas coming out of the seabed and direct it safely to where it's going to go. Again, another Christmas tree photo, this time doing some system integration testing. This was part of a project, my first time actually going through the project development and construction process. In this role, I was lucky enough to be deployed overseas to Scotland and Norway as company representative for some of this manufacturing. So again, a great way to apply what we do on paper a lot of the time and actually see it coming into practice. And I think, like Colin and Rochelle shared, there's a love of seeing things actually happen, making cool stuff happen. That said, I'd always wanted to contribute more to the energy transition. So I was looking for a way to move away from oil and gas and into renewable energy. And to that end, I did some online courses in wind energy and in power systems engineering, so sort of electrical engineering. And that led to me taking the opportunity to join Alinta Energy, where initially I was focused on offshore wind alone, sort of applying some of the skills I'd learned at Woodside in offshore construction and engineering, and developed a team to focus on the Spinifex offshore wind project in Western Victoria. And again, another opportunity to go and see some cool stuff. We formed a joint venture with an international company. And during that process, I was lucky enough to visit the Baltic Sea in the middle of winter while they were installing offshore wind turbines. And these offshore wind turbines are enormous. That's a 10 megawatt unit in the background. And the vessel I'm standing on is about as big as a city block. It can accommodate 700 people and has 2 cranes that can lift 7,500 tons each. So really impressive scale and engineering. And these are just some of the things that you can do in a STEM career. Most recently, I've also sort of expanded my role to look at onshore wind projects, and that's the Marrie Wind Farm in the Shire of Dandaragan. Thanks, Rochelle. So a photo there of what an onshore wind farm in the Shire of Dandaragan looks like in the current beautiful spring weather when all the canola's flowering. And that photo is actually from the Yandon Wind Farm, which is Australia's most efficient wind farm and was developed and is operated by Alinta Energy. It's been operating for about 5 years now. We're currently developing another wind farm about 15 kilometres south, which is the Marrie Wind Farm, which we're hopeful is going to contribute to Western Australia's renewable energy transition and support the retirement of the state government's coal-fired generators towards the end of this decade. Throughout this whole career process, you've probably gathered that I like to jump at extracurricular opportunities. And similar to Colin, I've been involved in a number of different sort of societies and organisations. At university, I was the president of the Science Union, once I joined the offshore industry, I became heavily involved and got a scholarship from the Society of Underwater Technology. More recently, I've been involved with the Australian Institute of Energy and young professionals, and throughout that period, maintained a connection to Engineers Australia, my sort of host discipline. So I think taking up those extracurricular opportunities and saying yes to any opportunities as they arise is really important, because it's going to help you build your network, and that's what gives rise to the next opportunity that might come forward in your career. The last point I'd mention, echoing what Rochelle and Colin said, is that it's not all about the hard maths and sciences. I think the ability to have good communication skills and teamwork can't be understated. So to that end, don't think it's all about the maths, the physics, and the sciences. I would also focus on your English, and second language is great for helping expand your mind on how people can communicate. So I also studied French, which was a great experience. Anyway, that's enough from me. Back to you, Rochelle.
Thanks, Lyndon. That was a really great share. So what I'm going to do now is get Colin and Lyndon to come back and join me. Just a reminder, we do have a Q&A chat area. If you can please put your questions in. Whilst I've got a few questions to get us started, I would much rather that we hear from you and answer the questions you've got. So we might just start with the one that's already in there, because Lyndon was almost starting to answer it without necessarily realizing it. So the question is, I'm not particularly strong in science and maths, but I find it really interesting. Can I still do a job like all of yours? So maybe, Colin, I'll get you to share a couple of observations. We might all have a go at this one.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, I agree totally with what Lyndon was saying at the back end of his talk. I found that STEM subjects I really enjoyed, but if I could go back, I wish I'd tried a bit harder or done a bit more with English and the creative side subjects that I took on, because yeah, communication is so vital in what we do, and problem solving as well, to get creative. And I think when we talk about the energy transition in particular, we need to start thinking of creative solutions. So that creativity and that out of the box thinking, I think, is really important. So yeah, certainly I think STEM subjects, the hard STEM subjects, are not not your bare essentials.
Anything to add, Lyndon?
Yeah, I can add a few thoughts, but completely agree with what Colin said. There's a few other career paths that are within the STEM field that don't necessarily need the hard maths and science sort of fundamentals. A good example is I've currently got a graduate in my team at Alinta who's actually got an architecture background, but she's working in project management and using her excellent communication skills and creative skills to support our renewable energy development projects. The other thinking is that it's really important as we go through this energy transition to be able to communicate to the wider community and the public about why this is important and why we have to stay the course. So to that end, careers in politics and science communications are incredibly valuable and shouldn't be, I guess, underestimated.
Yeah, great, thanks. I guess I'll offer a couple of different perspectives to add to that. So I've had the good fortune to lead some really great diverse teams. And in one of my most recent teams, I had 2 team members who came to their engineering degrees via what I would call different pathways. So one started in a trade, pattern maker in a foundry, and continued to build his skills online using different learning techniques, maybe in addition to a traditional university, to build up and go more through a TAFE pathway to get to engineering, and then finished doing a master's at university at a point in time where that learning style really suited for him. And the other one, fairly similarly, came up through doing a TAFE model, then actually went and worked in a university as a lab technician and almost picked up a lot of what he needed by osmosis, and is probably one of the cleverest engineers I actually know, to be honest. But also very pragmatic, very creative, very practical, and could probably fix almost anything with some gaffer tape and while still protecting the principles of how it works from an engineering perspective. So what I would encourage you is, particularly those at school, is there is certain learning styles that evolve over time, and different people understand the sciences in their own time and in their own way. And so just because something might be a little bit difficult now doesn't mean it's not something that you can build your skills in over time. But certainly echo the value of being able to communicate, think creatively, and add value that way. So encourage people to keep putting questions in, but what I'll do is I'll go to a couple other ones. So Lyndon, who's been your biggest influencer in your STEM career pathway?
I probably actually covered this a little bit in my talk, but looking back over, I guess, my studies and then my career, it's been good preparing for this little talk to think about who did shape where I led, who influenced me to take the choices and study the subjects I did. And I'll come back to my high school design and technology teacher. I didn't even actually do design and technology as a subject, but because of his sort of passion to, in his own time, run extracurricular subjects like the solar car and the electric vehicle challenge, I think that got me really enthusiastic about the applications of STEM subjects, and was probably the single biggest influence in me picking to study engineering at university, and that created all the opportunities that I talked through in my talk. So he doesn't know this. I need to reach out to him and say thanks, and I look forward to doing that. But yeah, I think passionate teachers have a huge influence, and credit to them.
Great. Maybe we should share the recording link with him, Lyndon, and he can see it loud and clear, and also you passing it on. We'll jump to the chat. So there's a couple of questions here around environment, but we'll start with the one around thoughts on environmental science as a subject at high school and students undertaking it. It wasn't a subject when I was at high school, so it certainly sounds like a highly relevant subject for getting a foundation in what we need for a sustainable future, particularly if it's anchoring on the sciences. But any thoughts, Lyndon?
Sorry, I actually missed what was the name of the subject?
So it's environmental science as a high school subject.
Yeah, definitely I've got some thoughts about that. To increase the amount of renewable energy on our grid today and help turn off the coal-fired power stations and ultimately the gas-fired power stations, we need to have the skills to develop new projects. And new projects are generally built on land or at sea. And it's really important that when we develop projects, we can do it with the confidence that we're not going to have unintended impacts on the environment. So I think environmental scientists are incredibly useful in the energy transition. You may have heard in the media that a lot of wind farm projects take years and years to get their environmental approvals. And that's potentially slowing down our phase out of fossil fuels. So I think studying environmental science, it also wasn't a unit when I was at school, but if that's available to you and you're interested in it and passionate about it, then I think it's a great opportunity to lead into a career in the energy transition.
Great, thanks, Lyndon. Colin, I'm going to get you to start with the next one. I'll read it out for everyone. Hi, I'm currently studying an environmental management degree. What are some of the qualities you will look for in intern and graduates, which I'm sure you've had a few of, and how does one stand out amongst the cohort?
Yeah, thanks, Rochelle, and great question. I think it talks to, in terms of what Lyndon was talking about, the context. It's such a great degree to be studying in regards to some of the challenges we're facing. Qualities that I look for in the interns and graduates that apply, and how do they stand out? I think in particular, I look for those who are doing a little bit more outside of their core studies, so maybe getting involved with that cause in some other way. Trying to convey your real passion for the area that you're talking about. So the ability to communicate, we've been talking about it, but to actually be able to communicate why you're so interested in that area and what type of impact you want to have and where you see yourself, those sort of questions come up a fair bit in the interviews that I conduct, and that's certainly an area that I think if you can show your passion and show that you're so passionate about it, you've gone to some extra means to get involved. I think that's really important.
And I just add to that, you've heard from all of us today that we all undertake volunteer activities in varying degrees, either through standards committees, Engineers Australia, or through community clubs. And I think it's also important for people to highlight what they're doing in that space in terms of giving back and broadening their way they engage. Because that's also where you build a lot of the really useful skills in teamwork, is by participating in these activities, even from a young age. So we've got a couple of minutes, and maybe I'll just hit you up with one more question, Colin. What's an energy transition technology or project that you're really super excited about right now?
Yeah, the one that I tend to go to is, I love the generation side, but I like the storage side in a great deal at the moment. We do a lot in terms of battery energy storage, but coming from a mechanical engineering background, I love the pumped hydro ideas and the work that we're doing in that space. And Australia is just so well suited to the number of potential locations for pumped hydro setups, and the fact that there's such a long-standing and giant battery. Yeah, I love that idea, and we've got such great examples in Snowy and others around the country. So
yeah, great. We're a little bit light on for the elevation requirements in Western Australia. But Lyndon, what about for yourself? What would be your top pick?
Yeah, it was funny to hear Colin saying that, because I was going to say exactly the same thing. Deep storage, I think, is the next big thing. For anyone that follows the news, you might have heard that a couple of days ago, the National Electricity Market, which is the electricity grid that covers all of Eastern Australia, had its record largest curtailment of more than 10 gigawatts. So that means that there was so much renewable energy being produced, but not enough load for it, not enough people to use it. And because there wasn't enough storage, it was just turned off. So that energy could have been produced, clean energy, but it wasn't. And to give you an idea, 10 gigawatts, that's, off the top of my head, that's like 1 million houses with solar panels on top.
Yeah, great. Thanks. I'm conscious of time, so we'll have to leave it there for today. I'll have to keep my own thoughts on that one for another time. I'd really like to thank Colin and Lyndon for giving us their time today, and also thank all of the audience for joining us to listen in. We hope you took something away from today, and that you're all excited to seriously consider pursuing some pathways towards helping with the energy transition and careers in STEM. So over to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Rochelle. Thank you so much for your time and contribution to today's session. All the Colin and Lyndon as well. So inspiring to hear your career journeys and the wonderful insights for our audience. Thank you to everyone who joined us in offices and classrooms today. We hope you have taken something away from this session. It's left you with some ideas about your own possible career journeys. We will have our next Shape Your Future webinar on October 15, where we will be exploring careers in AI and robotics that are helping us to automate innovation. We hope you can join us for that one as well. Thanks everyone again, and we'll see you next time.